Welcome to Craft a Brew. Let's make some kombucha. Kombucha is a fermented beverage made by using a SCOBY, which is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, to activate fermentation. This little colony is kind of a jellyfish-looking mass, and it ferments the sugars in your beverage, and that creates the kind of tingly, sparkling, tart beverage of kombucha, and also imbues it with the healthy probiotics that are good for your gut health. Kombucha is tasty and fairly easy to make at home, and we're going to be using the kombucha starter kit here to make a delicious 1-gallon batch of tea-based kombucha. So let's take a look at what's inside. First up, we've got our SCOBY culture. Next up, we've got our sugar. This is organic sugar. And organic black tea. We also have a reusable tea bag. And we've got this piece of cloth with an elastic inside that's going to go on the top of our fermentation vessel. Speaking of, we have the fermentation vessel, and also we've got the instruction booklet. So these are all the pieces that we need to get started. First things first, we've got to boil up some water so we can make some tea. So we'll begin by putting 4 cups of water into this Dutch oven, and we're just gonna bring it up to a boil before cutting the heat. Perfect, we're at a boil. So let's let that cool for just a bit while we transfer our tea to our tea straining bag. Just cinch it up tight. And these bags are reusable. So once you're done making the tea, you can actually just dump the tea out, flip it inside out, give it a good wash and a dry, and it'll be ready for the next time you make kombucha. Now that our water has cooled down a little bit, let's put our tea bag in, and we're gonna give that a 15-minute steep. And you might just use a clean spoon to press that bag down and make sure that everything is saturated with water. Just gonna cover that, and we'll be back in 15 minutes. All right, 15-minute timer is up. Let's get that tea bag out of there. And we're just gonna press that to make sure every last drop of tea is out of that bag. And like I said, don't throw out that tea bag because that is reusable. And kombucha is kind of like an infinite tea if you treat everything just right. You can roll over your SCOBY to the next batch. You can use your tea bag for quite a while as long as you take care of it. And so this kit and kombucha making in general is actually pretty convenient because once you've got the initial investment in, you've got kombucha for a lifetime. Now that our tea bag is thoroughly strained, it's time to get our sugar dissolved into that tea. So we're just gonna open this up, dump it in, and give it a nice stir for a minute or two until we don't feel any of these granules left in there. Everything's fully dissolved. All right, I don't feel the granules in the bottom of there, so they should be fully dissolved. Now we're gonna put 9 cups of cold, filtered water into our fermentation vessel. And you may have better accuracy than I do, but I'm going to use a canning funnel for this, so that way I you know, make a little bit less of a mess than I would otherwise. And next, our tea goes in. Now it's time to pitch our SCOBY, our symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast, so we can get fermentation going. But we want to make sure this is not so hot that it will damage our SCOBY. So we want to make sure it is below about 85 degrees, somewhere in the range of room temperature. And here I've got this at 85 degrees. So we are ready to pitch this in. If you don't have a thermometer like this, time is fine. To wait about 30 minutes to an hour to make sure it cools down. Exciting! This is the moment you've been waiting for. You are kicking off fermentation of your batch of kombucha. Carefully slide that SCOBY and all the contents of the package in your fermentation vessel. Now all that's left to do is cover this, put it in a dark but breathable place like a room you don't ever go into, and let it ferment. We're gonna let this ferment for 7 days, and then we're gonna start tasting it to see if it's kind of where we like the flavor profile. If it is, we're ready to bottle. So I'm gonna put this away, let it go on a 7-day vacation, let fermentation really get going in there, let that SCOBY start eating some of those sugars and transforming this into the beverage we all know and love. And we'll come back in 7 days and see where it's at. It is day 7. We're gonna take a taste of our kombucha and see if it's ready to get into bottles. You can see a nice, fresh SCOBY colony has started on top. Just dip down into the side there and try a bit. Yeah, I think that's ready. It's got a nice little sour twang to it. Still a little bit of sweetness in there. Nice tannin from the tea. The tea really supports the flavor profile in there. So I think it's time to get this into bottles. So first thing we're gonna do is we are going to harvest the SCOBY out of here. There's some in the bottom you can see down there, and there's this fresh colony on top. We're gonna get all that out. We're gonna take a couple cups of our kombucha out and put it in with the SCOBY. That'll be our starter tea for next time. And then we'll get this funneled into bottles. And we'll just set that aside. We're gonna use that to make our next batch of kombucha. Don't throw that out, that's valuable. Important to note, everything should be clean and relatively sanitized. You can do that with the sanitize cycle and no soap in your dishwasher, or by using hot water. Just don't use antibacterial soap because that can harm your SCOBY. We're trying to leave about 1 inch of space at the top of each bottle. All right, so we're just gonna seal these up, and here in about 2 to 3 days, we'll check on them just by burping the lid and see if we've got carbonation in there. Carbonating like this is not an exact science, so what you're checking for is carbonating activity, a little hiss when you burp that bottle. If you are getting that little hiss, leave it for about another 24 hours, then put it immediately into the fridge. You don't want it to overcarbonate because then you might have bottle bombs. So be very careful carbonating in glass bottles. I'm gonna let these set at room temperature and we'll be back to check on them in 2 to 3 days. Meanwhile, I've got some more kombucha to make. It's been a few days. It's time to check our kombucha for carbonation and see if it's ready to drink. Just a little bit of petulance there. I see some bubbles rising to the top. I think we're gonna go ahead and put this in the fridge. We'll give it about 24 to 48 hours and then we'll be ready to drink it. All right, it's been 48 hours. We've got our nice chilled bottle of kombucha here. Let's open it up and see how it is. It's got a very light sparkle to it. You can see bubbles clinging to the glass there. You might want this a little bit more petulant, or maybe you want to serve it still, not wait as long. It's up to you. Kombucha is one of those things where you can kind of make it however you like it. And that's what's really cool about making kombucha at home. Let's give it a taste. It's still got just a little bit of that sweetness in there. The funk isn't too strong. It's got a really nice kind of complex and almost fruity flavor to it. And the tannin from the tea works really well to support all of those complex flavors. It's pretty cool how the yeast and bacteria in that SCOBY work together to create those flavors and transform a regular old glass of sweet tea into something really complex and refined. Let us know in the comments if you've got fun riffs on kombucha that you like to do at home. And until next time, happy homebrewing.